Ever since I was a young girl, I remember dreaming about having a baby of my own and becoming a mum one day. In fact, I wanted a kid so bad that I distinctly remember my mum being confused and embarrassed when I was insisting that I wanted to have a child as soon as I turned 16. And throughout the entirety of education, you get taught and drilled into you that if you're a girl, you have a reproductive system that looks like this. And as part of this reproductive system, you will bleed once a month. And because of this bleeding, you will have the ability to get pregnant. From a young age, you get the impression that all women can get pregnant and they can have a baby and be happy. Infertility seems to be such a taboo that's only really mentioned in a sweeping comment or is shameful in some way. That's why, when I was diagnosed with MRKH at 16 years old, my life seemed to go dark in a flash. Those lifelong dreams I had of becoming a mother appeared to all be shattered in an instant. Because in that moment, and for a long time after, the shock and sadness affect you to a point where you can't even think straight and you can't come to terms with the devastating and life-changing news. And one thing that was repeatedly going through my head was that no man would ever love me or be able to accept this part of me. And it's a feeling I couldn't shake. It just feels like you've had this huge weight chucked on you and you've got to carry it around with you everywhere you go and be strong, even though you feel empty, incomplete, and not good enough, because it feels like our bodies have failed us by preventing us from naturally bearing children, which is something women are conventionally thought to be able to do. It took me quite a while to realise that I was actually grieving for a baby that I'll never carry and that I'll possibly never have. And that I had such tunnel vision that made me only focus on the negatives and what was stopping me from having a child. And for a long time, this is how I felt. And to some extent, I still do, because it is something I'm always aware of and always going to have. So I think about it often. But with time and by working on myself, I've slowly come to terms with the diagnosis and the consequences that it has on my potential motherhood. This has enabled me to open my mind and actually see all the positives and possibilities available to me so that I can one day have kids. So, even though this diagnosis has thrown a huge spanner in the works and makes things a lot more difficult, I haven't changed my views. I still want kids, and I think the diagnosis has actually helped me to become so much more open minded to the different options available. And these options include adoption, surrogacy, donors, and so many more. And the big, new, and exciting one, which seems to have so much potential, uterus transplants. I remember about a year after my diagnosis, my doctor said to me about these, and she said she thinks in 10 years or so, when I'm planning to have kids, she really thinks and hopes that these are more mainstream and that I could have this as a viable option. And obviously, it's very risky, but who knows? Like, maybe in a few years' time, this will be a more widespread option that's available to women with MRKH or similar conditions. And I'd love to have this as an option, as I've always wanted to carry my own child because I do crave that connection that comes with it. I think so. This is a part that I've struggled with a lot because I've always been worried that not carrying my child means that I won't have a bond with them. But I've grown to learn that being a mother isn't all about biology, it's about loving a child unconditionally, whether you carry them or not, and whether you share DNA with them or not. I mean, technology is even so amazing nowadays that artificial wombs are being experimented. So the future for women with MIKH may have even more options, and I just think this is so exciting. Having said that, this doesn't change or take away from the fact that this diagnosis can change you and hurt you. It took me a while to figure out that, and that it's perfectly normal to grieve, because at the end of the day, it is a loss. Not everyone has alternate options to have children, so I feel grateful that I may have the option if I choose to someday. And it made me realize that I really do want children, because despite all of the difficulties there'll be to get there, I can't wait for that part of my future.